Well, we've made it into June here in my garden in Westchester, Pennsylvania, Zone 6B, and the lavender is starting to bloom. It's one of the best plants for hot, dry, sunny areas of the garden, but there's really a few things that you need to keep in mind while growing lavender to get the best display out of your plants each year, and that's what we're gonna go through in today's video. Now, the first thing that you need to note is that it's neither a shrub nor a herbaceous perennial. It's in fact considered a sub-shrub because it does have a woody base at the bottom, and then it becomes more herbaceous on the top. And understanding that distinction means you are going to need to do an annual spring pruning of your plants in order to keep them to a good size. Otherwise, if you don't do that annual spring pruning, the plants will end up getting very leggy at the base with that woody section extending each year. And that's going to leave for very barren bases of your plants rather than having this nice bushy growth like you can see here. And if you're looking for a video on how to do that spring pruning, go check the description below. You'll find a link to a video that I've done demonstrating exactly how to do so. Now, as you can see, I'm growing a really nice compact lavender here. There's lots of different varieties and cultivars out there, some which can get really quite large, 3 feet or more in height and width. So you're going to want to be sure of which variety you're growing, not only for the size, but also for the hardiness, as well as the kind of flowers that they produce. Lavender that is known as Spanish lavender, sometimes French lavender, Lavandula stoicus, that's not going to be winter hardy in my zone here, so I won't be growing that here. A couple of the cultivars that I specifically have found that grows well in our climate, which gets quite humid during the summer months and quite cold in the winter time, would be the sensational lavender, the super blue lavender, and the big time blue lavender, which I'm growing here. I particularly love this big time blue because it's by far the first one blooming in my garden, and it is the most compact. This is its ultimate size, only about 12 inches high with its foliage, and then maybe another 6 inches with these flower spikes. And because they flower so earlier in the season, you can actually cut off this first flush of flowers after a few weeks, and then they will absolutely produce a second flush of blooms later in the growing season, particularly at a time when there's not a lot of pollen-rich flowers in bloom. And that's very helpful for many of our pollinators to provide them with that late season of blooms. So here you can see my big time blue. And back here is my lavender sensational, which is definitely going to be taller. It's just now starting its flower spikes. We're in the first week of June here. It's nice to grow a few different cultivars which have that staggering of bloom times, and that's going to provide the longest season of lavender flowers in your garden. Now, I like this sensational lavender. This was bred here in Pennsylvania, so it's a great choice for our climate as well as our soil. And I also love this sensational lavender because it does look the best of all lavenders during the winter months. Most of this garden bed right here, it's a little bit bare, but my lavender looks gorgeous and takes on a really nice silvery look in the winter time. Generally, our lavenders are going to be evergreen all year long, but some tend to look better through those winters than others, and the sensational definitely looks the best. Now, we're definitely going to want to position our lavender plants in full sun areas of our gardens. If you don't give it sufficient sunlight, there's a good chance they probably won't bloom. That's not to say it's the worst thing in the world. The plants do look beautiful even without their blooms, but most of us are going to garden for these gorgeous, fragrant flowers. Now, in terms of soil, it's imperative that they have great drainage. You never want to plant them in an area of the garden that's going to retain moisture, particularly during those winter months. If you have really heavy clay soils, look for lavenders that are a little bit more acceptable of clay soils. In particular, that sensational lavender that I was talking about earlier does quite well in our Pennsylvania clay soil. But if your garden beds don't have good drainage, either don't plant lavender, or you can try to increase that drainage by adding things like gravel to your soil to really help that water flow out. Now, along the same veins, they do love lean soils, which means they don't need the richest, darkest soils to be grown in. In fact, if your soil is too rich, what can end up happening is your plants can get quite tall and leggy, and then they end up getting floppy. Now here you can see this is the super blue lavender, and I've added some rocks around the base of it to really help ensure that there is not going to be any moisture that's really piling up around the base of this plant. Now in terms of fertilizer, I don't even fertilize my plants. If I'm out just doing some slow release fertilizer to everything in the springtime, then I might sprinkle some on, but these are not heavy feeders, so fertilizer shouldn't be a concern for you. Now, when you're starting with new plants, I recommend just start with a small 3.5-inch pot. There's no need to pay extra for a larger plant. And so I have this section here. It gets full sun, southern facing garden, and getting it planted is super easy. I always like to break those roots up a little bit. Making sure that the soil line of your plant is now flush with the soil of your garden bed. And you can go ahead and put that mulch back. And it's really just that easy. And the last thing that you're going to want to do is in the late autumn, you're gonna wanna cut back those flowers from your plants. You don't want them to overwinter with those spent blooms on it. So just take your shears, cut off that top layer, and then that's going to allow your plant to overwinter the most easily. And with that, now you know some great tips to growing lavender successfully, to grow a nice, bushy, healthy plant that's going to bloom for you one season after the next. They're very easy plants, but a few little simple tips will ensure you have the best displays possible. And if you are looking for a video on how to propagate your lavender, make sure you subscribe. I'm in the process of making a video all about how to duplicate our lavenders easily and efficiently so you can really increase the stock of your lavender plants in your garden. Anyways, thanks for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you later. Ciao.